All right, Brandon, I know TV is what we typically cover, but there are some movies happening this summer. There's the new Spielberg movie, there's Toy Story 5, Spider-Man, Brand New Day is about to come out. What have you seen so far this summer that's really caught your eye?
So I did see Toy Story 5 and I saw Obsession, which vastly different movies. Obsession I watched on streaming because I couldn't get anybody to see that with me. Toy Story 5 though, I got to say I was a little bit skeptical because I'm like, okay, well the trilogy was perfect, 4 was unnecessary. Why are we doing a 5? 5 was pretty great. I got to be honest. I thought it was Return to Form and I thought they handled the whole tablet and tech stuff along with toys very, very well. So highly recommend Toy Story 5 and Obsession. It is pretty it's a true horror movie, but it's really good as well. So highly recommend both of those if you're into those genres. Vastly different movies.
Well, as we've talked about, I'm not much of a horror person, but I did watch Widow's Bay, and that's about all the scary I can handle. It did scare me, but Toy Story, I kind of grew up on that. I mean, when Pixar became a thing, I watched every Pixar movie, and I thought they were just the greatest. And of course, Toy Story set the precedent for all the great Pixar movies that followed. But I have failed as a parent because my kids have zero interest in Toy Story.
No way. For real?
Yeah,
Wow.
I can't even get them to watch the first one.
No way. They're so good. And I
I
think
know.
like Toy Story is kind of perfect, I think, for every age too, whether you're like a kid, a young kid, like an adult. Maybe it's like that sweet spot now where they're like kind of too cool because they're not young kids, but they're not quite adults where you appreciate it in a different way. Maybe they're in that kind of like spot right now. Maybe in a few years, they'll be old enough to where it's cool again to watch Toy Story.
Well, I'll hold out hope. I will be going to see Spider-Man Brand New Day as soon as it comes out.
I am so pumped about Spider-Man Brand New Day. Spider-Man is my favorite, like all-time favorite superhero, really all-time favorite character in like pulp culture. Like it would be like Spider-Man and like Michael Corleone are like my favorites and all time. So yeah, I am really excited. It's the first Marvel movie really since No Way Home that I'm actually really pumped about.
Well, at least there's something good to do during the off season to keep yourself occupied until training camp and then the regular season starts.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's going to get real slow in the basketball world, because you have the season, then you have the playoffs, then you have the draft right afterwards. You have summer league, you have free agency, you have all these trades. But after summer league, things are going to really die down and get really slow until training camp and preseason starts. So yeah, see as many movies, catch up on all your shows and all that stuff. You're going to have plenty of time here in the dog days of summer here pretty soon.
Welcome back to the Daily Thunder podcast. I'm John Napier, publisher of Daily Thunder, and I'll be your host today. Alongside me is Daily Thunder beat writer Brandon Rahbar. Brandon, how are you today?
I'm doing well. I am excited that we have some summer league basketball, even if it hasn't been the prettiest. And I'm excited about movies and shows, and yeah, I'm doing well.
Yeah, and there's stuff to talk about, even though we're in between actual basketball. There was the draft, we have summer league, and so far the NBA offseason and free agency trades, excluding the Thunder, it's been crazy. It's been really crazy.
It has been crazy. Like all the movement. I will say this from the top. It's nice for once to see all these stars either being traded or going to the East or staying in the East. It seems like in the past, every superstar that got traded to the West. So now we've seen Kawhi Leonard. He's now in the East, which helps the Thunder in two ways because one, he's out of the West, but then also that helps that Clippers swap in 2027 that the Thunder have, and we could talk about that later if you wanted to, but that pick gets really, really interesting given the new lottery reform and the fact that Kawhi is gone out east. And Giannis stays in the East. Jaylen Brown stays in the East, and it looks like LeBron James is going to go back to the East. So a little change from the norm for the West contenders with all this movement.
Yeah, so on the show we'll talk NBA free agency, trades, impact on the Thunder, and the moves the Thunder did so far here in the offseason. We'll touch on Summer League and see how the Thunder draft picks have done so far. And that'll be a good way to kind of have some summer content for the pod and for Thunder fans. But let's start Thunder related on the offseason front. The Thunder made 2 trades in trading away 2 fan favorites in Isaiah Joe and Aaron Wiggins. What's your reaction on those two trades?
Both of these trades were so similar because both of these guys were excellent role players, fan favorites, but I think both of these trades were necessary for all parties because the Thunder had to free up 2 roster spots. They had 2 first-round draft picks. Those are guaranteed contracts. And so when you look at the roster, they just made the most sense to trade. You shed salary, save a ton of money in tax savings, and you get both of these guys who were great role players for the Thunder, but had been losing minutes because the Thunder had Jeremy McCain and AJ Mitchell, and you're going to get Sorber back. You got Stirtz and Mara in the rotation now. So Joe in Detroit, Wiggins in Atlanta, they'll have a chance to really play minutes and have a real role. And these are good landing spots because they're playoff teams in the East. They'll get a chance to shine. So I think it's a win-win-win for Atlanta and Detroit because they got good role players. It's a win for Wiggins and Joe because they're going to get minutes again and be in real rotations for playoff teams. But the Thunder shed salary. They free up roster spots. And you save a ton in tax. And I just don't think that ultimately, oh, by the way, they get assets back because you get 2 first-round picks for each of these guys because they were positive players. Ultimately, though, the rotation, you fill in those spots with McCain, Sturts, AJ Mitchell. All these guys are going to be soaking up minutes.
And do you think that Sam Presti and the Thunder intentionally traded these guys to Eastern Conference teams?
I think that they found the best landing spots for the players. I think that it was another positive, maybe sweetened it a little bit for the Thunder that they were both in the East. But I think ultimately we've seen this with the Thunder. They take care of their guys and make sure they get them to places that are going to be good for them. Wiggins is going to get to play in Atlanta for a young playoff team. Joe is going to have a nice role in Detroit for a team that was the number 1 seed in the East last year. So I think it helps that it was in the East, but ultimately there were 2 teams that could absorb those contracts without sending money back, without sending a player back. That alone is an asset for the Thunder. And then on top of that, each of them gave up 2 second-round picks. So I just think it was a win all around.
Yeah, and I think that was a pretty important part of the deal that you noted where the Thunder weren't taking any salary back. So it was just offloading the contracts. No impact financially, saved a bunch of money, both in the tax and on salary. But I'm gonna see if you'll choose, and I know you'll be diplomatic here, but who are you gonna miss the most? Who do you think the Thunder next season would have preferred to have if they could have kept 1 or 2 between Joe and Wiggins?
I would say Isaiah Joe. I mean, Aaron Wiggins, the Aaron Wiggins that we've seen in Oklahoma City that can be a dynamic player off the bench and shoot it from 3-point range really well and also ball handle some and do a little bit of playmaking and shot creation and be at least a neutral defensively, if not a positive. That player obviously will be missed. I just think that Isaiah Joe's 3-point shooting is special. His gravity, his spacing, his being an outlet for Shea and for J-Dub, And for AJ Mitchell, I just think he's a really, really special shooter. And he's got some underrated, like, we see those dunks like once or twice a year. But I think his effort defensively and all those things, he takes charges as like the smallest dude on the floor. So I would say Isaiah Joe. Wiggins didn't have the season that we're used to seeing from him last year. So, obviously Joe was better last year. Hopefully Wiggins gets back to that. He dealt with some injuries and it was hard for him to just get back, and his minutes were up and down. The Thunder tried to give him opportunities to get back to the Wiggins that we're used to. I think that, full off season, recovering from injuries, being in Atlanta, I think that hopefully he'll get back to that guy. But I think ultimately Joe will be missed more. But the Thunder have Jared McCain now to soak up those minutes. And I do think that Bennett Stirtz is going to be a great shooter off the bench as well.
Well, in other Thunder news, the major offseason transaction was the signing of Isaiah Hartenstein to a new 3-year, $75 million deal. It's an interesting deal where the Thunder actually included a 15% trade kicker. That is not normal for this organization to kind of limit flexibility in their contracts in that way. And this mutual option language to end the contract a year early. What are your thoughts on that contract?
What a huge win for the Thunder to get Isaiah Hartenstein on this deal. And I think that you saw both Hartenstein wanting to be in Oklahoma City and the Thunder wanting, obviously, Hartenstein to stay here in Oklahoma City. Both of them just worked this out for like a mutual win. And it's funny to say mutual because there's that mutual option in year 3. And yes, the trade kicker, I think that this was just a win-win. I think Isaiah Hartenstein is absolutely a player that could have got more money than this on the open market, but he's been very clear that he loves it here in Oklahoma City. He's been such a big part of the community and doing community work and entrenching himself in Oklahoma City in that way. And I think he truly values that. I think he values being on this team where everybody likes each other. The locker room is great, and he makes a huge impact on winning. And Oklahoma City obviously values him in that way as well. I just think that this is a contract that is a win now contract because he is going to outplay that contract. He is better than $25 million a year. He could have got more money than that, but it's also a very tradable contract, even with the trade kicker, because he is a better than $25 million a year player. And if they need to, for flexibility with other contracts coming up, other guys needing to be paid, it takes care of the win now as Mara and Sorber get their feet wet, get reps, prepare to take over that role possibly in the future. And so hopefully one of Mara or Sorber or both are ready to take over here in a couple years. And so you kind of got the insurance. You can trade that Hartenstein contract later and probably get positive assets back for it. And he can help you win now. And then hopefully have Sorber or Mara take over later.
Well, it is pretty important, I think, for Isaiah Hartenstein to come back. I'm very glad that they brought him back. I mean, he was an essential part of the core in what the Thunder did in their championship run, but also the success they had last season. And the Thunder are 88-16 when Isaiah Hartenstein plays, so he definitely makes the team better. Now, the other re-signing or contract that is worth noting is Kenny Hustle back on a very team-friendly deal. Sounds like another guy who wanted to be here.
Absolutely. I think Kenrich could have got more money than this on the open market. You saw it even in the playoffs. He could sit on the bench, not have his number called for a number of games, and he gets called in the middle of the playoffs, goes out there, hits a bunch of threes, has his trademark hustle and defense, and he can play up and down the lineup. And of course, like what he means to the locker room as one of the veterans on this team, beloved by the franchise. And he has made it clear that he wants to be in Oklahoma City. And I think that's why he was willing to take less to stay in Oklahoma City. He said a few years ago, like I went back and looked, like I believe it was 2021 when he first said that he loves it here and he'd like to retire here. And he has echoed those sentiments several times since. I believe he said it like 3 or 4 times that he wants to be in Oklahoma City. He wants to retire in Oklahoma City. And this deal, again, is like a mutual, the Thunder value Kenrich and what he means off and on the court. and Kenrich values being in Oklahoma City. And I think that this contract proves that both ways.
Well, not a signing or a contract, but an option exercised by the team to retain Lou Dort. I think there was a lot of speculation regarding what might happen to Lou Dort, especially after the Isaiah Hartenstein contract was announced. Were you surprised that the Thunder exercised the option?
No, because it was the only way that made sense, because if you're going to decline him, you're either going to lose him for nothing, and Lou Dort is still a positive player and a positive contract, and you can get assets back if you were to trade him. So it was either that or you decline him and sign him for longer, a longer contract. And that I didn't think was going to happen, just because the question marks around like Cason Wallace's extension and what happens in the future with AJ Mitchell and other players that need to be signed, Jared McCain in the future and all those things. So with those question marks, it didn't really make sense right now to decline and sign longer term. But it didn't also make any sense to just decline and lose Lou Dort and have him go out in the open market and lose him for nothing. So you either have Lou Dort on your team, which is a positive. I know that may not be the consensus. Some people may not agree with that, but I still think that Lou Dort, his defense, and I believe in the larger sample size of his 3-point shooting, I still think he's a positive. Or you trade the contract and you get positive assets back.
And I think that is notable because at this point, the Thunder are going to be in the second apron, and I don't think that there is a real path to get under the second apron without removing Lou Dort's contract. But they don't have to make that decision now, right? They exercise the option. They have all the same flexibility regarding potentially trading him. And then again, to your point, they're not losing him for nothing if that's the route they want to go. But if they want to keep him, if they think that he's still adding value to the team and keeps the Thunder in contention and likely title favorites, then I'm impressed about the commitment to live in the second apron, to live with a pretty significant luxury tax bill, because they want to win. They want to go and try to take another title with this core.
Yeah, and I think Cray wrote a great article, very in depth, very much worth reading about this scenario. Look, I don't know what the Thunder are going to do, but Lou Dort is a positive player that teams want on their roster and the Thunder want on their roster. And so they either go over the second apron for Lou Dort, or other teams come calling and you trade the contract and get a positive player back.
Well, and then talking about Lou Dort, I think the other implication is on, I don't know, what some people view as the Lou Dort option in the event that he's gone is Cason Wallace. And Cason Wallace is extension eligible. I don't think there has been anything announced or really any rumors on what's going to happen with Cason Wallace. His comments in his exit interviews have been construed that Cason wants a larger role and he wants to have the opportunity to do more offensively. What do you think is going to happen with Cason?
I think that Cason gets the contract extension because Cason Wallace is a really good player, and I think the Thunder are interested in having really good players on the roster. I was there for that press conference where he was asked about the extension, and what I gathered and what I think that everybody in the room gathered was his basic message was he's not motivated by money. He's motivated by improving, getting better. And I do think, obviously, he deserves a big role on this team because he's that good, but he's young. I don't think he's still scratched the surface of what he can ultimately be. I think he's one of the best perimeter defenders in the entire league already. And I think he has some real potential as a shooter and some on-ball stuff. And just his offensive game, I think, can expand even further. I would be shocked if Cason doesn't stay here in Oklahoma City. And he is such a good player. I think, obviously, the core is the big three. But then after that, like Cason and AJ Mitchell, I think are the next important players long term. When you're looking at long term, like who you want to keep, I think you're looking at Cason and AJ Mitchell outside of the big three.
Yeah, I think you made some really good comments there. I think Cason is great. I think he had the opportunity in this last season with all of the injuries to showcase his potential as an offensive player too and an offensive threat. he probably needs to get a little bit better there, a little more consistent. But I think he has demonstrated he has the tools to do it. He's an incredible athlete. He's got really high basketball IQ, and if anything, you want to sign him to an extension to have the same flexibility that we just talked about with Lou Dort, because people are going to want Cason Wallace on their roster. I'd much rather have him on our roster than any other roster, but he's going to be a well sought after player.
Oh, yeah. If for some reason, just hypothetically, the Thunder were to trade Cason Wallace, what you would get back, you would get a haul for Cason Wallace. Like, I'm not Bill Simmons. I don't do like the ringer, like trade rankings and values and stuff like that. But he would be up there because he's so young. He's such a great defender, and he's a two-way player. His 3-point shooting combined with his defense. If you were to trade him, you would get a haul back. So, but that said, I think the Thunder very much do not want to trade him. I think they want him on their team. He's got the greatest win percentage in NBA history. And, obviously he's surrounded by great players. But yeah, he's just a winning player.
Well, let's take a look at the NBA at large. And I think you had already touched on some of the major moves at the top. Giannis on the move, Jaylen Brown on the move, Paul George, a part of that same transaction. Kawhi leaves the Clippers, which is interesting for the Thunder, and heads back to Toronto. And then you said, all the major action was happening towards the East or in the East. I don't know if you were intentionally throwing some shade at LaMelo Ball, who went to the Wolves, or John Morant to Portland, or Walker Kessler, who stayed in the West with the Lakers. But, there have been some pretty significant moves. One, what is your pick for the most shocking offseason transaction? And then second, which one do you think has the biggest impact on the Thunder?
Ooh, good questions. Yeah, I didn't mean to throw any shade towards LaMelo. I do think, though, that, at best, that's like a lateral move, trading Julius Randle and Naz Reid for LaMelo. So I just can't see, and I just think that Kawhi going East, I'll touch on that one first, because I think that impacts the Thunder the most, just because I just think that first round swap next year could be so juicy, because these new lottery rules, that 4 to 10 ending in the bottom 4 to 10 spots gives you the best chance to jump up in the lottery. And I just don't see a way where the Clippers right now with their roster are going to be one of the 3 bottom teams. But I also don't see them being one of the best 20 teams. I think they are perfectly suited as constructed to be in that 4 to 10 spot. So I think that pick could be so good. And if Kawhi was still on this team, I think that you're going to see, like you did last year, like a number 12 overall pick, which is really nice. That is great, especially when your team is a contender. But man, that has a lot of potential next year. As far as shocking goes, I don't know what the most shocking move would be. Maybe I was shocked to see Kawhi to go back to Toronto, just because he seemed to want to get out of there so badly. And so to see him want to go back, I think was a little bit surprising. I think that the Lakers going all in on Walker Kessler is not surprising, but the haul that they had to give up to get Walker Kessler was surprising. And I just think that they're topped out now as like a top 5 seed is like their upside, their ceiling. I just don't see a way. They should be better, because Walker Kessler, they needed some sort of rim protection. They needed a lob threat for Luka, and they've done a decent job of getting other guys like Quentin Grimes and Mamu around him. Kevin Looney was a decent signing, but I think that Luka and Austin Reeves' offense and then Walker Kessler's defense, that's nice, but does it contend with the Thunder or the Spurs at full health? No. Does it contend with the Nuggets if they're at full health? I don't think so. Maybe they're in that tier with the Nuggets and Wolves, but they're kind of topped out right now. So I was a little surprised to see how much they gave up for Walker Kessler. Giannis going to the Heat is fine, but like, where's the shooting? Where's the playmaking? Where's the guard play? You basically have Giannis and Bam and Andrew Wiggins. And then Jaylen Brown to the 76ers, I do think that is probably the biggest needle mover, because I don't think that either of the two hot takes are correct. I don't think that Jaylen Brown is like a true MVP type level player, but I also don't think he's like the sixth or seventh best player on the Celtics or on a contending team. I think he's a good, positive all-star player. And I do think that the 76ers got significantly better if if Joel Embiid can stay healthy, and then Edgecombe takes a leap, and you got Tyrese Maxey. Like, I think in the East, they're a contender now. So I think that they kind of move up into that contender status in the East if they stay healthy.
Well, there were some material transactions that did happen in the West that might impact, the balance of power to some degree, or at least the threats to the Thunder as the reigning Western Conference number 1 seed, although not Western Conference champions. Denver added Tyus Jones and Marvin Bagley. Tobias Harris went to San Antonio. How do you feel about those moves helping some of the Thunder competitors in the West?
Yeah, I think that the Nuggets will be about the same, because it looks like they're not going to be able to keep Peyton Watson. And, he was hurt last year, so they didn't really have him, but they really needed him, and they were at their best if they have a healthy Peyton Watson, or at least a healthy Aaron Gordon. So Marvin Bagley is fine as a backup. Tyus Jones is fine, but I think that they're about the same. I do think that the Tobias Harris pickup for San Antonio was good. And, that's obviously, if you're a Thunder fan, that's unfortunate. But I will say this, they had some money to spend. They needed some size next to Wemby. He's a vet in the room. So I do think it's a positive signing, but I don't think it's like a huge needle mover. But obviously a good signing. I think that he can still play. I know that they were interested in Rui as well. Rui's a better shooter, but Tobias Harris is probably a better all-around player, quite honestly. Ultimately, I think that the Thunder improved the most in the West. This is like low-hanging fruit. I realize that. But they improved the most by getting a healthy J-Dub and AJ Mitchell back. Like, the Tobias Harris signing does not impact the balance of the West in a playoff series as much as the Thunder getting J-Dub and AJ Mitchell back. And I truly believe that. So I think that that's ultimately, if you're the Thunder, what you're looking at. Like, yeah, the Spurs did improve. The internal development, Dylan Harper is going to get better. Stephon Castle should get better. Wemby is going to get better. And I think those are the bigger needle movers than Tobias Harris. But the Tobias Harris signing was nice, but ultimately J-Dub and AJ Mitchell are the bigger needle movers.
Well, speaking of other needle movers that we haven't touched on, the Thunder added 3 draft picks in the latest draft, including Mara at 12, Stirtz at 16, and then Oweh in the second round at the pick number 41. You've been watching some Summer League. Those guys have played 2 games so far. What are your hot takes on the Thunder's new draft picks?
Yeah, I think all the positive traits that made them NBA draft picks, they've shown in Summer League so far. And then some of the question marks, those have shown as well. Obviously, Summer League, it's so funny because these players didn't even know which teams were going to draft them a few days before this. And then all of a sudden they get drafted, and then they're playing with complete strangers in this environment a few days later. And so Summer League, you got to take with a grain of salt. And then, like, that first game, they're playing against the Grizzlies, who are like the 90s Bulls of Summer League. Like, they're playing like their actual roster that they're going to be playing pretty much this season. They're trotting out the number 3 pick and Boozer. They're playing Cedric Coward, who was like all rookie team last year. So they've got a great squad. So you can't look at the final score, but here's what I've liked about Mara. His playmaking pops. That was his biggest positive trait as a prospect, and it's already showing in Summer League. His rim protection, his other big positive trait, that's shown. He had 4 blocks in game 2 against the Hawks. It looked like he had 6 or 7, honestly. And then he had so much like rim deterrent, like the whole, classic neverminds that they talk about with Wemby. He's shown that in Summer League. And then his rim finishing, like his finishing lob, scoring at the basket. He's had some nice like turnaround baseline jumpers that, I didn't expect. So he's got some nice touch there. He's got some potential as a shooter. But then the question marks, like his mobility, his defense in space, are still question marks. Obviously. Then Bennett Stirtz, I like his playmaking. I like his shooting. I know game 2, it was rough when you look at the numbers. He shot 2 of 3 from 3 in game 1. He had a nice, like, deep 30-foot step back at the shot clock buzzer. He was 1 of 7 from 3 in game 2, but a lot of those were difficult. Like, the defenses are completely keying on him because he's really the only offensive shot creator and initiator. So he's kind of getting the best shot from them. And then some of those were just like late game trying to catch up type things. But as a playmaker, shot creator, shooter, I think all those positive traits are there. I think the effort has been there on defense. He's like a high IQ, high feel guy, and he's shown that defensively. Then I think Otega Oweh, the athleticism, the defense, being handsy, being aggressive defensively, that's shown as well. But then, question marks about the shooting and the offensive efficiency. But I think positives from all 3 of these guys, as far as takeaways go. I'm looking forward to seeing more from them in Las Vegas.
Yeah, and I think you're exactly right. You don't want to take too much away from Summer League. It's a weird environment for these guys just coming off of the draft. And, I think they want to try to show up, but they also just want to play smart. They've got a new coach that they're adjusting to who's not going to be their coach in the regular season. So it's not really dispositive of anything. It is more interesting than it is valuable as far as takeaways go. But I was intrigued by Mara going into the draft, and then there was a Daily Thunder podcast that was lost, and I took the mantle of saying the Thunder should take Mara at 12, and him as a rim protector and him as a passer, things that I think he demonstrated at points in Summer League are the upsides for him. And between Hart, Mara, and Chet on that front line, that is a pretty incredible defensive front court, in addition to the incredible defensive backcourt the Thunder have with Lou Dort, Cason Wallace, J-Dub is a plus defender, and Alex Caruso, Shea. So the Thunder are more stacked defensively going into next season than they were last year. So exciting to see these guys play, but we'll get more to take away on their fit with the Thunder and their potential to contribute once we get into training camp.
Yeah, absolutely. But you're right. Mara's baseline, like his floor already at the NBA level, because he's 7'3" and have a 7'6" wingspan, rim protection on defense is there. Absolutely. I have zero doubt about it. He is massive, and he is going to protect the rim, and he is going to play make offensively. He has found cutters, and he barely even knows his teammates' names now in Summer League, but he's finding these guys cutting. Like his high post playmaking is going to be there, and his rim finishing is going to be there. So that's like his baseline. But also, he just makes the Thunder huge. They are massive in the front court. Between Chet's being 7'1", having 7'6" wingspan, Mara 7'3", 7'6" wingspan, Isaiah Hartenstein 7 foot with a 7'2" wingspan, and then Sorber, yeah, he's 6'9", but he has a 7'6" wingspan. And then even Jay Will, he has improved so much as a defender. And plays so well on that end now and has such great feel for the game. He's one of the best bench bigs in the entire league, and then how he's improved 3-point shooting. They just have so much versatility now as far as like what they can do with their bigs, and it feels like there's going to be a couple bigs out there all the time, and I'm excited to see what Mark does as far as like these guys playing together. Like, are we going to get Mara and Chet minutes? Are we going to get Sorber and Hartenstein minutes? Like Jay Will and Mara? Like, just the different lineups they can try it out. I'm just excited to see what they do.
Yeah, and I didn't mince Sorber when we're talking about the size in the front court that the Thunder have. Didn't mince Jay Will, and so it is a wealth of talent that the Thunder have as far as size goes, and probably as good as almost any team in the NBA there. So yes, lots to be excited about as far as this upcoming season. And that's basically what I had for this podcast. I know it is, off season, so there is not as much to talk about as you do in the regular season. But anything so far in the off season that you think we missed here that you've been itching to cover?
Not really. I think that it's been the big takeaway for me. I do think that the Thunder have improved the roster. And this is a team that won 68 games in 64 games, 1 year removed from a championship. And honestly, we're just a few plays away from going back to the NBA Finals, despite missing their second best and fourth or fifth best players. I think they've improved the roster because as great as Aaron Wiggins and Isaiah Joe are, and they are very, very good role players, and they will be missed and they'll be beloved forever in Thunder lore and history because they helped bring this team a championship. I think that the upside you get with Mara and Stirtz, like the players that they can become, not that they are right now, but that they can become, helps with the upside. And Wiggins and Joe were losing minutes in the playoff rotation because of guys like Jared McCain and AJ Mitchell and those guys. So I think that they've improved by adding more upside and potential ceiling to the roster and like the diversity, like that Sturts brings, not only as a shooter, but playmaking, having another ball handler out there. And then Mara, just the massive size and how he can be used as a weapon. And then looking at the NBA landscape, ultimately the needle moving, trades and deals and free agents, all that stuff is kind of happening in the East. Like the West contenders, besides the Thunder, you look at the Spurs, they added Tobias Harris. I think that's the biggest move as far as like competition for the Thunder, because I think the Nuggets are pretty much staying the same, and they might lose Peyton Watson. The Lakers, I don't know how much better they aren't when you lose LeBron James, Marcus Smart, Luke Kennard, DeAndre Ayton, but then add Walker Kessler, Quentin Grimes, Mamu, and those guys. Maybe they get a little bit better because they needed a good center so badly, and they get a healthy Luka back. Obviously, that helps. The Wolves, I think lateral, maybe slight improvement. So I think that you look at the West, and it is still clearly, to me, after all this movement that has happened, it's still the Thunder and the Spurs.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's what I'm hoping for and excited about. I would love a rematch in the Western Conference Finals with both teams healthy.
Yes, absolutely. It's too bad that we didn't get to see both teams healthy this past season. I think, honestly, it's probably a different result. There's no way of knowing that. But if we can just get a healthy Thunder versus Spurs playoff series, that would be fantastic. That would be, I think last year was the beginning of the NBA's best rivalry for the next half decade.
Well, the next time that you join me here on the pod, we're going to revisit your 26 statements made with extreme confidence. We'll see how well you did. So, yeah, keep us in your feed. And that's a great place to close it today. That's all the time we have for this podcast. Thanks for tuning in to the Daily Thunder podcast. I'm John Napier, host of the podcast, and he's Brandon Rahbar, Daily Thunder beat writer. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to subscribe to the Daily Thunder podcast on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss any future episodes. And if you like what you hear, do us a favor and leave us a rating and review wherever you get your podcasts. And we'll be back in your feed soon.